So welcome to my guide to winter cycling. In this segment I'm going to talk about what my recommendations are in terms of what clothing you should wear if you're going to ride your bicycle in the winter. So to introduce myself, I'm cjhoyle and I make a variety of different videos which are about bicycling and bicycle repairs. I live in Canada's largest city, which is called Toronto, and in Toronto the temperature in the winter goes down as cold as about -30 Celsius, maybe a little bit lower than that, but around -30s, about the coldest as you'll see. And I don't own a vehicle. I have a bunch of bikes and I rely almost entirely on those for getting me around town. I do use public transit as well from time to time, but the majority of my travel is done by bicycle, and that includes going back and forth to work. The office where I work is about 8 kilometers from my apartment building, and I do that distance to and from work pretty much every single work day. And I do it throughout the entire year, including the coldest days of the winter. And this past winter I haven't missed a single day during the winter. Choosing the right clothing to wear for riding a bicycle on a winter day can actually be somewhat tricky because although, as everyone knows, it's really important to make sure that you're wearing enough clothing you're not going to be too cold. It's actually equally as important to make sure that you're not wearing too much clothing that you're going to be too warm and overheating underneath those clothes. Because what ends up happening is if you're wearing too much clothing, of course you're getting really, really warm underneath those layers, and that'll cause you to sweat, which of course is quite uncomfortable to be warm and sweaty. But what it will eventually do is your clothing will start to get wet as well, and wearing wet clothing on a cold winter day is really not a good idea. So the way that I'm going to present this information to you is I'm going to show you various different pieces of clothing that I have found that work really well for me for riding in the winter. And I'm going to present those using various different temperature ranges. So there'll be an upper temperature and a lower temperature. And I'll show you what I would personally choose to wear if the temperature outside happened to fall between those temperature ranges. Just to be clear, what I'm going to be showing you here is the clothing that I personally wear and what I've found has worked well for me. And although there may be a few things that you'll see which you may think are a pretty good idea and you may think are worth investing in, by no means am I saying that you need to go out and buy exactly the same wardrobe that I have to be able to ride during the winter. In a lot of cases you probably already have a lot of things in your closet that will work well for you. The important thing is just to be able to experiment and try out different combinations to find out what will work best for you for riding during the winter. Alright, so we're going to start with our first temperature range here, which is actually the summer temperature range. For the sake of completeness, I want to start, all the way from the warmest temperatures, which pretty much everyone already knows what to ride in, and then from there I'm going to move down into the lower temperature ranges, all the way down to the very coldest temperatures which I've ridden in. So what I wear on my shirt is I wear usually a breathable sort of like a soccer jersey kind of a shirt, something that breathes. Of course, breathability is always really, really important. And I actually have this one here, which actually used to be a soccer jersey of mine. And of course, I like wearing this one because it's a fluorescent green color, so it helps the traffic be able to see me. And on my legs, of course, I wear a pair of bicycle shorts. You don't need to wear bicycle shorts, but bicycle shorts are always a good idea if you're riding a long distance because they have this cushiony part here, which is called a chamois, which makes it more comfortable for riding longer distances. And on my eyes, I like to wear a pair of tinted sunglasses, and these are actually a pair of tinted safety glasses. I bought these from a hardware store, and I actually always like to wear some kind of a pair of glasses on my eyes when I'm riding a bicycle, because I have kind of sensitive eyes, and I find that any amount of wind that's rushing over my eyes tends to make them tear up a little bit, and it's really kind of uncomfortable and distracting when I'm riding a bicycle. So of course during the summer I like to wear a pair of these, and I've had a lot of good success with safety glasses because they have a nice wide lens and they do a really good job of keeping all the wind from getting into my eyes. And of course they're quite affordable as well. I got this pair for about $10, but sometimes you can see them for as low as about $3. And for all seasons of the year, I just wear a regular pair of running shoes. Of course, I know that bicycling shoes are more efficient and better for riding a bicycle, but usually when I'm biking around the city, I'm usually getting off my bike and walking around, going in stores, walking through a mall or something like that. And I find that that biking shoes aren't as comfortable for walking in. So I find that running shoes are pretty good in between of being pretty good for riding and pretty good for walking as well. And of course, whenever riding a bicycle, I always recommend wearing a helmet. Alright, so now moving down to the next temperature range. This is what I call cool weather. And cool weather is just a little bit colder than what you wear during a summer's day. A lot of the stuff's the same, but there's just a few very small differences. So during this temperature range, I'm still just wearing my regular bike shorts. I don't find that I need anything, anything long to go on my legs to keep my legs warm. I find that this is, enough for this sort of temperature. And of course, I'm just wearing my helmet now. I'm not wearing anything over my ears or anything to keep my head warm at all. But the main difference is for my shirt. Instead of wearing one of those short sleeve soccer jerseys like I was showing before, I'm now wearing something that has long sleeves, just to give me a little bit of extra warmth on my body. This shirt is actually made out of the same material as those soccer jerseys that I was showing you before, and I do wear this shirt quite a bit, but this shirt is actually my new favorite long sleeve shirt. It's kind of the same. It has has really good breathability properties as well, but it's made out of a material which is called merino wool, which in addition to having really good breathability, it has some sort of an anti-odor absorbing sort of property to it, so that if you wear this several days, it doesn't really start to smell for several weeks. It really doesn't absorb any of your body odors when you're wearing it. Now I have found for the temperature range that the clothing that I just showed you here is actually not quite warm enough for the first few minutes of your ride. For the first 5-10 minutes of your ride, you'll probably find that it's quite cold for getting started, but once the heat is built up inside of all of your clothing and everything, you'll definitely find that clothing works really well. Although if you are finding those first 5 or 10 minutes quite uncomfortable, then I recommend bringing some sort of a light jacket with you that you can wear just for those first 5 minutes or so, and then after you've gotten really warm, you can take it off and just store it somewhere in your bike for the rest of the ride. Like I said before, I always like to wear safety glasses when I'm riding my bicycle, and you'll find that once you start getting into the colder temperatures, you start to also get into the shorter days where it starts getting darker quite a bit earlier in the evening. So that's where using my clear safety glasses comes in really handy, because wearing the tinted ones really doesn't work very well when you're riding at night. So the next temperature range that we're going to talk about here is what I call cold weather, and you'll probably notice that it's quite a large temperature range. The top temperature and the bottom temperature of the range are quite far apart, but the clothing that I'm going to show you here, in my experience, does work really well for any given temperature within the range. So the first piece of clothing that I'm going to talk about here are these fluorescent green reflective straps that are kind of like suspenders. Basically what the idea of these is to increase your visibility. So you can pretty much wear them on top of any piece of clothing that you have, and it greatly increases your visibility. And visibility is extremely important when you're riding a bicycle. But it's also really extremely important riding a bicycle during the winter, because as I mentioned before, once you get into the colder temperatures, the days become shorter as well. So there's a greater chance that you're going to be riding when it's not so light out or when it's dark outside. And on top of that, motorists aren't typically used to seeing a lot of cyclists riding on the road. So they're not necessarily going to be, watching as carefully for you when they're riding along. They're just really not expecting you to be there. So making sure that you're, as visible as possible is a really good idea. What I like about the straps, as opposed to getting a traditional kind of a safety vest, which you could basically wear on top of your clothing, is that the straps, when you're wearing them, they basically just cover a small little strip of your body on the front and on the back. Whereas if you're wearing a safety vest, it pretty much covers your entire front and your entire back. And even if the safety vest has some kind of a mesh or something to allow the air to get through it, I don't find that there's quite as good airflow as when you're not wearing the vest. So I really find that the safety straps do a much better job because they pretty much allow airflow to your entire body, with the exception of those small little section where the strap is. So the next item that I'm going to talk about here is the jacket that I use for winter cycling. which is probably the most useful item that I have in my entire wardrobe with respect to winter cycling. I actually wear this jacket as my outer layer from every single temperature range which is below freezing. So this temperature range and all the lower ones below it as well, this is my outer layer. And this jacket is actually what you call a soft shell jacket, and it's actually originally designed for cross-country skiing. But as I said, I found that it works extremely well for winter cycling. And it kind of makes sense because the sports are kind of somewhat similar. Riding your bike during the winter, you're kind of working about as hard as someone works when they're cross-country skiing, and you're kind of moving about kind of a similar speed as well. So what I really like about this jacket is the kind of material that it has is a really good combination of being somewhat waterproof, but also being quite breathable as well. So if you wear this on like a day when it's really, really heavy pouring rain, you'll probably find that some water will eventually soak through and you will get wet. But on days when it's just a light rain or just snow that's falling down, it does a really, really good job of repelling the moisture on the outside and keeping you dry. The material that this jacket is made out of is 84% polyester, 12% polyurethane, and 4% spandex. The other reason why this jacket works so great for such a wide range of temperatures is that it has these vents on the front which can be unzipped. So if you are finding that you're wearing this jacket on a day when it's a little bit too warm for it, you can simply just zip down this vent as far as you want it to go down to allow just a little bit of extra airflow to go inside and cool you down a little bit so that you're going to be comfortable while you're riding. So for my legs, by this time of the year, I find that shorts are not quite warm enough. So I have this pair of pants, which I wear quite a bit during the winter. This pair of pants is actually made out of a very similar material as the red jacket which I was just showing you. So it has like a kind of outside fabric which is somewhat waterproof but also extremely, extremely breathable. So it allows lots of airflow to go through there and keep you at a really nice, comfortable temperature. I'm not exactly sure what activity they designed these to be used for, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was for cross-country skiing as well. Underneath those pants I wear a pair of these which are called short liners, and basically have the same idea as bike shorts. They're just basically bike shorts but they have a thinner material and they're a little bit smaller. But the idea is so that you can be sitting on one of these nice comfortable cushions which are called chamois. And of course you could just wear regular underwear as well, but if you're going to be riding a fair distance, it is a good idea to get something like this to give you a little bit of extra comfort while you're riding. So as I mentioned before, I personally always like to wear safety glasses when I'm riding a bicycle, and that's because my eyes are particularly sensitive. But for most people, I think this applies to just about everybody for the colder temperatures, because when you're riding and it's cold, I think that just about everybody will find that really, really cold air getting blown into their eyes is quite irritating, especially if there's even little bits of snow which are in the air as well. So in that case, I definitely would recommend getting a pair of these safety glasses. As I said before, I actually got this pair for only $3, so they're quite affordable. The only downside to them is that you'll probably find from time to time when you're wearing them, they might start to fog up a little bit. But the best way to get the fog to clear is just simply to pull the glasses a little bit away from your face, and that allows a little bit more airflow to get behind there and to clear that moisture out of there. You probably also notice that they usually tend to fog up the most when you're riding, fairly slowly, or when you're stopped at a traffic light or a stop sign. The reason that happens is because when you're not moving, there's pretty much no airflow at all, which can get behind the glasses. So what my recommendation is, if you know that you're coming up to a place where you're going to need to stop, or it's a spot where you need to ride pretty slowly, my recommendation is just to take off your glasses for the duration of that section, and then once you get moving again, then you just put them right back on again. So when you're riding during this temperature range, you'll probably find that your hands will get pretty cold if you don't have anything to protect them. So I recommend getting a pair of these light, breathable gloves. I actually got these from a dollar store for only $1.25, and they've done a pretty good job for me this winter for these temperature ranges. and they're made out of some kind of a fleece material, so something that's kind of light and breathable does a pretty good job for these temperatures. Of course, at this time of the year, you still want to make sure that you're wearing your helmet. And I personally don't find that the top of my head or my neck or anything like that really gets too cold during this temperature range. But the one thing that really definitely gets cold, right at the very top of this temperature range, is my ears. I find that my ears get too cold, and keeping your ears warm is extremely, extremely important because ears are quite susceptible to getting frostbite. So what I recommend is getting a pair of these earmuffs, a pair of earmuffs which connect along the back, because they're basically just a warm cushion pad which gets pushed up against your ears, and then they connect along this wire along the back, which basically just pushes it up against your ears. And the beautiful thing about these is that you're able to put on a helmet without the earmuffs getting interfered at all with the helmet. So the next temperature range is what I call frosty weather, and it's just slightly colder than the last one that we talked about. And a lot of the clothing that I wear is actually quite the same. There's just a few small differences. So to start, first I'm still wearing my reflective straps and my same light breathable soft shell jacket. But underneath that, instead of wearing a short sleeve shirt, I'm now wearing a long sleeve breathable shirt instead, which is a really good job just keeping me a little bit extra warm while I'm riding. On my legs, there's no difference there. I'm still wearing my soft shell pants on top of my short liners. So for this temperature range, I find that I need a little bit of extra warmth on my hands. So I have this pair of ski gloves, which I use, and I think that ski gloves work quite well. They're made to be quite warm. They're really made for quite cold temperatures. You pretty much need a pair of ski gloves if you're going to do any kind of an activity outside on these kind of cold days. And ski gloves are also really good because a lot of them are water repellent, so they don't really allow any moisture to get inside. Of course, that means that they're not very breathable as well. But for bicycling, it really doesn't matter that much because your hands don't really work a whole lot. Basically, your hands, when you're riding a bike, they're basically working just about as hard as they are when you're skiing, because when you're skiing, you basically just have your hands so they're gripped around a ski pole. They don't really do a whole lot other than that, which is basically the same as when you're riding a bike. Basically, all you have is your hands are just wrapped around the handlebars. So in terms of my head, of course, I still want to wear my helmet, and my earmuffs still do a really good job of keeping my ears warm. However, during this time of the year, I start to find that the top of my head, depending on how much hair I have, will start to get kind of cold, as well as my neck area and my chin and stuff like that. So that's where my balaclava comes in. So I've actually had this balaclava for quite a few years, and I really, really like it. It's made out of polyester, and it's actually a really, really thin layer. You can actually see right through it if you hold it up to the light. And the reason that I find that it works really well is because, as I said, it's really, really thin, which means it doesn't provide an awful lot of warmth, but I find that it just provides just that small little bit that you need for keeping the top of your head warm, as well as your neck and stuff. And being that it's quite thin, it also fits really easily underneath a helmet. So it fits easily onto your head, and then you can put your earmuffs on top of it, and then the helmet just goes on very easily on top of that. And this flap here, you can actually pull up and bring it all the way up to your nose. So with your glasses on there, you can pretty much have your entire face so that it's covered and protected from wind chill. So the last temperature range I'm going to talk about here is what I call freezing weather. And freezing weather is pretty much the coldest that it gets in Toronto, and the coldest that I've ever personally ridden in. So a lot of the things that I'm going to show you here are very similar to what I showed in the last temperature range, but there are a few important differences between them. So this one again starts with reflective straps and my soft shell light breathable jacket. However, underneath that jacket, I am still wearing a long sleeve breathable shirt. This one has thicker material, so it's a little bit extra warm. You could achieve the same thing just simply by wearing two of the lighter long sleeve breathable shirts as well. Again, that would just provide a little bit of extra warmth to keep you a little bit warmer for those colder days. For my legs, I'm still wearing my short liners and my soft shell breathable pants. However, I do need a little bit of extra warmth for my legs, so in between those two layers, I wear a pair of these, which are called long johns or long underwear, which provide a little bit of extra insulation and make you a little bit warmer. They have like a, what do you call it, waffle sort of texture to the outside of them. And they're made of a nice stretchy material. It's really important to find a pair of long johns that will fit you really well. I actually spent quite a bit of time trying on different pairs of long johns, trying to find ones that would work for me. Because if you have ones that are too tight, then it makes it really hard for your knee to bend, when you're pedaling. And if they're too loose, then you have like all this extra baggy material, which is underneath, your other pair of pants, which makes it, really uncomfortable having all that extra fabric there. And there's really not a whole lot of space between your leg and on the outside of your pants. In this temperature range, I still find that my warm ski gloves are plenty warm enough for these colder temperatures. And on my head, I'm still just wearing my thin, light balaclava and earmuffs underneath my helmet. You might find that this isn't quite warm enough. You might want to wear something that's a little bit thicker than that, but personally I found that this was plenty warm enough for me. And finally, for my feet, I am still wearing my running shoes, but I do tend to find that my toes will get a little bit cold on these colder days, so there's really not a whole lot of warmth inside of shoes. So what I do to combat that is I just wear 2 pairs of my regular socks, which can just give me a little bit of extra warmth inside of my shoes. You could also get a pair of warm thermal wool socks, which would do the same thing. All of the information which I've just presented is also available in a short summary page on my website. Follow the link in the description below to visit that page. Keep in mind that all the information that I presented to you is all based on my own personal experiences, given the clothing that I had available to me to experiment with, and what I personally found worked well for me. As I said before, I don't recommend going out and buying the exact same wardrobe that I have, because even if you did, there's no guarantee that those clothes would work as well for you as they have for me. You can use the information which I've presented to you here as some guidelines or as a place to start if you're going to start riding during the winter. But you do need to do a little bit of experimentation yourself to be able to find out what will work best for you. The way that I was able to gather all this information was simply by doing my own trial and error and keeping track of it all. So on various different days, I would keep track of what the temperature was, what I wore, and how well it worked. And from that information, I consolidated it all together and created those temperature ranges. So now I have a very accurate table which I can refer to on any given day. I just look at what the temperature is outside, and then on the table I just look up, what that temperature range is, and then I know exactly what to wear that day, so I'll be nice and warm for my ride to work. However, even if you have a really good idea of what clothing to wear for a certain temperature, I also recommend bringing extra clothing with you because there's pretty much a guarantee that the temperature is going to change while you're gone, and you want to make sure that you also have the right clothing to wear for your trip back home again. So that concludes my guide to winter cycling. I hope this video will help to inspire people to consider bicycling as a viable year-round method for transportation. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please check out cjhoyle.com, and thanks for watching.